Zip ties cut into her wrists. The concrete was cold under her knees, and somewhere above her, a fluorescent light buzzed like it was dying too. Dust hung in the beam of a single work lamp across the garage, and every breath she took echoed off concrete pillars that seemed to lean in closer than they should have. "You people killed my brother." A shadow crossed the light. Dragons inked across his knuckles caught the glow as the man crouched down to her level, close enough now that she could see the exhaustion behind his eyes, the kind that didn't come from one bad night, but from years of them. "Your brother isn't dead. Don't. He's the reason you're still breathing right now." Her whole body went still. Somewhere behind him, a second man shifted his weight, waiting on a word that hadn't come yet. The 3 months that had led to this moment replayed themselves behind her eyes faster than she could stop them. The office with no name on the door, the tattoos she'd once found frightening and now found familiar, the photograph on her kitchen table that had started all of this unraveling in earnest. That again. Slower, because if you're lying to me right now, I swear. I've never lied to you about him. I've only ever gone quiet. That's the same thing. It isn't. And you're about to understand the difference whether you want to or not.
How could you do this?
If you want to know how
You
she
should have
ended
stayed
up on her
away.
knees in a parking garage, staring at the one man who might actually be telling her the truth, you have to go back 3 months, to before any of this made sense. Before the tattoos meant anything. Before the silence became the whole story. The woman hated interviews, and she hated them more when rent was due in 4 days, and her account had $200 sitting in it like a joke. She sat across from a recruiter in a small office that smelled like fresh paint and old money, the kind of room designed to make people forget how little they actually knew about who they were sitting across from. 6 weeks. Translate meetings, review shipping contracts, triple your normal rate. Triple, for contracts, for discretion. She flipped open the folder he slid across the table, the paper still warm from the printer. One line was blacked out, the client's name, buried under a thick marker stroke that had clearly been drawn more than once, as if the first pass hadn't felt final enough. Who am I actually working for? Someone who values silence. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Take it or leave it. She should have walked out then. She had walked out of worse offers for less money before on principle alone. But principle didn't pay rent, and rent was the only thing standing between her and a mattress on someone's living room floor. She thought about her landlord's last text, final notice, no exceptions, and she signed. That night her roommate caught her packing a bag for the job. A blacked out client name, that's not discretion. That's a red flag with a bow on it. It's triple pay. For 6 weeks, I'll be fine. You said that about the last job too. The one where your boss disappeared with 3 months of everyone's paycheck. This is different. Or is it just a nicer building? It's rent. It's not a debate. Fine. But you text me every night, every single night. She didn't answer right away. She just zipped the bag shut, then promised she would. Monday morning there was no sign on the building, just a keypad and a camera that turned to follow her face as she approached. The lobby smelled faintly of cedar and floor polish, the kind of quiet that came from money, not from emptiness. When the elevator doors opened, a man was already waiting, tattoos climbing from under his collar up the side of his neck and disappearing beneath his jaw, dark ink against skin that looked like it had spent very little time in the sun. Late. The elevator was late. I was on time. Something flickered in his eyes, not quite a smile, but close. Run this floor. You'll be translating for me the next 6 weeks. What exactly are you? The reason your rent gets paid. He walked off before she could answer, footsteps unhurried, like a man who had never once needed to rush toward anything in his life. She stood there a moment, arms crossed, telling herself this was still just a job, that the tattoos and the blacked-out name and the 11-second pause before he'd answered her question didn't mean anything at all. She should have quit right there. She didn't. The job got strange fast. Meetings happened in warehouses instead of offices. Contracts were written in code, furniture that was never furniture, textiles that never touched a loom. Men who never smiled sat across the table from him like he was a king who'd never asked to be crowned. That last man called the shipment delicate cargo, she said once after a meeting. What does that actually mean? It means don't ask me that question in a room with cameras. I'm translating things I'm not allowed to understand. You're translating words. Understanding is optional. Stay on the optional side. One night, after a meeting ended in slammed doors, she found him alone on the office balcony, city lights spread out beneath them like something too big to belong to any one person. Not in shipping. It matter. You're paid the same. Matters because I don't help criminals. My father built something out of nothing in a country that spat on him for not being born here. What I run keeps 400 families fed. That doesn't make it clean. It doesn't. He turned to face her. Don't pretend you understand the whole picture from one balcony conversation. Then paint me the picture. Some things keep people alive by staying unpainted. She turned to leave. His voice stopped her at the door. Your last name. Unusual to hear in a place like this. Something cold slid down her spine. She turned back slowly. Why does that matter to you? No reason. You don't get to say no reason with a face like that. Good night. But his jaw had tightened, like a man swallowing a truth whole and choking a little on the way down. She couldn't sleep that night. She dug an old shoebox out from under her bed, photographs, a pendant, a newspaper clipping gone soft at the folds. Local man, 24, missing after warehouse fire. 3 years ago, her brother had vanished in Busan. The police called it an accident and closed the case in a month, like it never mattered to anyone but her. She remembered the last thing he'd told her on the phone, 6 days before the fire. If something happens to me, don't trust the easy answer. Somebody's going to hand you one. Don't take it. She had taken this translating job to get near shipping records, to chase the truth no one else bothered chasing. She hadn't expected the truth to have his face on it. The next morning, in the parking garage before anyone else arrived, she confronted him. You knew my brother. Don't lie to me. Don't know what you're talking about. My brother, Busan, 3 years ago, say you don't recognize him. Silence, long enough to feel like an answer on its own. I can't, because it's not true or because you don't want it to be. Get in the car. We need somewhere the walls don't listen. He took her to a rooftop garden 2 buildings over, quiet enough for men who needed to think without being overheard. Your brother worked cargo inspection. He found something he wasn't supposed to, falsified manifests. Weapons routed through legitimate lanes, tied to men far more dangerous than me. So he died because he found the truth. Never said he died. Her breath caught. Don't do that. Don't dangle hope in front of me like a puppet on a string. I'm not. He finally faced her. My father pulled him out before the fire, faked his death. The men hunting him would have killed your whole family to erase a witness. My father gave him a new name, a new country, a promise of silence. I inherited that promise when my father died 2 years ago. Prove it. He hadn't expected that. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded photograph, worn soft at the edges like it had been carried a long time. That's him. 4 months ago. Different name. Same face. Her hands shook taking it from him. You've known this whole time. Her voice cracked. You watched me grieve a man who's alive and you said nothing. The moment his name leaves my mouth, the people who wanted him dead start looking again. I've kept him breathing for 3 years by keeping mine shut. And now you've walked into my building asking me to break the one promise keeping him alive. What, I'm supposed to thank you for the silence? No, you're supposed to trust me a little longer. I know that's asking everything from a stranger. You're not a stranger anymore. You're the only person on earth who knows if my brother's alive. Then start acting like someone who wants him to stay that way. She didn't answer. She just sat down on the cold stone bench, hands shaking, photograph pressed to her chest, and let the silence between them do the talking for a while. Your father. How did he die? Heart attack in his office. Alone at 2 a.m. with 3 phones ringing that nobody answered until sunrise. You weren't there. I was overseas, closing a deal he'd asked me to close for a year. I flew back to a funeral instead of a father. That's not your fault. That to the version of me that still checks his phone at 2 a.m, half expecting it to be him. That why you kept the promise about my brother? Guilt, at first. Then it became something else. It became the only piece of my father I still had control over. As long as I kept his word, some part of him was still making decisions in this world. Now I'm asking you to break it. You're asking me to decide what my own word is worth, not his. That's never once been my decision until now. In the break room that afternoon, another woman pulled her aside, older, tired-eyed, a badge-reading legal clip to her blazer. New translator. 6 weeks. The last one lasted 3 days. Why? She asked too many questions in front of the wrong people. Do yourself a favor. Translate what's in front of you. Don't go looking behind it. That a warning or a threat? Where I work, there's not always a difference. Woman filed that away, the way she filed everything that didn't add up. 2 weeks later, she found the legal aid alone in the archive room, fluorescent light buzzing overhead between rows of filing cabinets that smelled like dust and old paper, and decided to gamble. Translator before me. What was her name? Why do you want to know? Because I think whatever she found, I'm about to find it too, and I'd rather know how it ended for her. The legal aide glanced at the door before answering. She went by a different name back then. Doesn't matter now. She's fine. Relocated, new job, new city. She wasn't hurt, but she was scared enough to leave everything behind in 1 week. Scared of what? She found a manifest that didn't match the shipping logs. Same route your brother used to inspect. Woman's stomach dropped. How do you know about my brother? Because I've worked here 9 years. I know every name that's ever gone quiet on a route through Busan. Yours isn't the first family this company owes an apology to. It might be the first one that gets it. Will you help me? I'll point. I won't push. Pointing, I can survive. Pushing gets people relocated or erased. Choose which one you're willing to risk being. She slid a folder 1/2 inch across the table, then walked away without looking back. The woman tucked it away, another piece of a puzzle she wasn't ready to place yet. The days that followed blurred together, meetings translated word for word by day. The folder read and reread by lamplight at night, every line of it committed to memory until she could have recited it in her sleep. She told herself she was being careful. She told herself a lot of things that week. That weekend, alone, she followed the address inside the folder to a warehouse 2 districts over, rusted gate, faded logo, exactly the kind of place that looked abandoned on purpose. The street outside was quiet in a way that felt deliberate, like even the neighborhood knew better than to look too closely. A security guard stepped out before she'd gone 10 feet past the fence. This is private property. I'm doing an inventory check. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Nobody told me about an inventory check. Then somebody forgot. Happens all the time in this business. He didn't fully believe her, but he didn't want the hassle either, and he waved her through with a look that told her exactly how much time she had before he changed his mind. Inside, crates were stacked floor to ceiling, half of them stamped with a coded label she recognized from an earlier meeting. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she moved between the rows, counting under her breath, matching numbers to memory. She photographed 3 of them with shaking hands before the guard's radio crackled behind her, and she was gone before she heard the rest of it, walking fast and even through the gate, forcing herself not to run until she was 3 blocks clear. She brought the photos to the man that night, expecting relief. She got something closer to fear. You went there alone. I found proof. Real proof. You found the one warehouse someone in my organization would kill to keep private, and you walked in with no one knowing where you were. So what? I should have waited for you to hand me answers on your own timeline. I should have told you everything the day you asked instead of making you dig for it yourself. That's on me. But please, next time, dig with me next to you. She didn't apologize. She didn't need to. But she let him look at the photographs like a partner instead of a secret being kept from him. That night, alone in his apartment, the man second in command sat with a photograph he hadn't looked at in years, the edges soft and furred from handling, kept for a long time in a drawer he rarely opened. 2 boys, maybe 14, grinning on a dock somewhere, arms slung over each other's shoulders like nothing in the world could ever come between them. We used to split 1 meal between us when there wasn't enough for 2, he murmured to no one. He gave me the bigger half every time. He put the photograph face down in a drawer, as if that might make the memory easier to close. The next day, that same man found the woman alone by the elevators, the hallway empty at that hour, every camera angle seemingly chosen on purpose, and smiled in a way that didn't touch his eyes. Made quite an impression on my boss. I'm just doing my job. Your job is words, nothing more. Some women forget that line. It doesn't end well for them. That a warning? It's advice, free of charge. I'd take it if I were you, she told the man that night. His face went very still. What exactly did he say to you? That some women forget where the line is, that it doesn't end well. He's never spoken to a translator directly in 4 years, not once. His jaw tightened. That's not about your brother anymore, that's about you. That night her apartment door was found unlocked. Nothing stolen, nothing broken, just 1 photograph left on her kitchen table, her brother, taken the day before he vanished. The edges lined up perfectly square with the corner of the table, deliberate in a way that made her skin crawl. A warning with no fingerprints on it. Her friend found her frozen at the kitchen table, still in her coat, keys still in her hand. Whose picture is that? My brother's. Your brother's been gone 3 years. I know. Then who put this on our table? I don't know yet. Then we're done. You're done with this job tonight. I can't walk away now, not when I'm this close. Close to what? Getting yourself hurt. Close to getting him back. Her friend didn't have an answer for that. She just sat down across from her and for once didn't argue. 3 days later, a detective knocked on the door and flashed a badge before the woman could ask who she was. her coat still damp from the rain outside, expression unreadable in the way of someone who had learned long ago not to give anything away for free. Been reviewing a warehouse fire in Busan from 3 years ago. Your brother's case. That case is closed. Cases like that only look closed. I've spent 6 months quietly reopening it. And your name keeps showing up in places it shouldn't, including on the payroll of a company under active investigation. I'm just a translator. Translators don't usually get their apartments broken into and nothing stolen. That's not a robbery. That's a message. What do you want from me? The truth. Whatever you found. Because if this goes the way I think it's going, you're not just chasing your brother's ghost anymore. You're standing in the middle of a case that could take down an entire organization or get you killed trying. If I don't talk to you, then I hope whoever you're trusting instead of me is worth the risk you're taking. She left a card on the table. Call me before it's too late to matter, and for what it's worth, my team's been watching that district for weeks. I'm not going anywhere whether you call or not. Woman didn't call that night. She didn't throw the card away either. The next few minutes would decide whether she'd just trusted the wrong man or the only man who'd ever told her the truth. 2 in the morning, her voice shook on the phone in a way it never had before. He arrived in 20 minutes. Pack a bag. You're not staying here tonight. I'm not running from a photograph. That photograph means someone inside my organization knows what I told you. Which means someone inside is willing to hurt you to protect themselves. I won't let that happen. Do you care so much what happens to me? 3 months ago, you didn't know I existed. Because you walked into a world built on silence, and the first thing you did was demand the truth anyway. I haven't met anyone brave enough to do that in years. That doesn't answer my question. I know. Pack your bag. If I go with you, I need to know I'm not just another promise you're planning to keep quiet. You're not a promise. You're the reason I'm starting to question all the ones I've already made. She looked at him a long moment. Then she went to pack. He moved her into a private residence, guarded around the clock, the kind of quiet luxury that felt more like a held breath than a comfort. Days turned into dinners that ran long, conversations that drifted from business into things neither of them had planned to share. Tell me about your father. The two of them were sitting on opposite ends of a couch neither had moved from in an hour. He wasn't a good man by most definitions. He was a fair one by the only definition that mattered where we grew up. There a difference? Ask your brother when you see him. He'll tell you my father kept his word when it would have been easier not to. She learned his tattoos weren't decoration. Each one marked a debt paid, a promise kept inked permanently because paper contracts burn, but a man's own skin doesn't lie. This one. She traced a fingertip along a dragon curling over his knuckle, feeling the raised edge of old scarring beneath the ink. What's it for? The day I took over. My father was already gone. I was 26 and terrified, and I made a promise to 400 families that I wouldn't let what he built fall apart. Have you kept it? Ask me again after this week. One evening she found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, badly overcooking rice for two, steam fogging the small window above the sink. You run an empire and you can't work a rice cooker. Never learned. There was always someone else's job to do it. Move, before you commit a second crime tonight. She nudged him aside, hip against his, and rewashed the rice while he watched her like it was the most interesting thing he'd seen all month, leaning against the counter with his arms crossed and an expression she hadn't seen on him before, something unguarded, almost boyish. My mother used to make this every Sunday. I haven't had it since she passed. Then tonight it's Sunday. Sit down. Let somebody take care of you for once. He didn't argue. They ate at the small kitchen table instead of the dining room, knees almost touching, the overhead light warm and low, talking about nothing that mattered, a bad reality show, the worst client he'd ever made her translate for, a song neither of them could name but both of them hummed anyway. For an hour there was no rival, no missing brother, no missing crates. Just two people finding out they liked the sound of each other laughing, the clatter of chopsticks against bowls, the small ordinary silences that didn't need filling. I forgot what this felt like. What dinner? Ordinary. I forgot what ordinary felt like. Later, her voice turned serious again. A detective came to my apartment. She's been reopening my brother's case. He went very still. What did you tell her? Nothing yet. I wanted to hear it from you first. If she pulls this thread before I finish dealing with the man threatening you, everything unravels in the wrong order. Your brother gets exposed before he's protected. You get exposed before you're safe. What? I just keep lying to a police detective because it's inconvenient for you. Not asking you to lie. I'm asking for a few more days to do this the way that keeps everyone breathing at the end of it. You keep asking for a few more days like they don't cost me anything. They cost me too. Every day I wait is a day he could hurt you worse than a photograph on a table. Then stop stalling and do something about him. I am. You're just not seeing it yet. He learned she'd raised herself since 17, put herself through school waiting tables, spent 3 years chasing a brother the world called dead because she refused to accept a story without an ending. You never stopped looking for him. He's my brother. Looking wasn't optional. My father used to say loyalty isn't a feeling. It's a decision you keep making even when it costs you everything. He paused. That's what you and your brother have, and it's what I feel every time I look at you now. Don't. I need to show you something tonight, before I lose the nerve. He didn't move right away. Neither did she. The space between them had gotten smaller over the weeks without either of them deciding it should. If this goes the way I think it's going to go tonight, I need you to know I didn't take this job looking for you. I know. I'm not sorry I found you anyway. He reached over, brushed a strand of hair back from her face, his hand lingering a moment longer than the gesture needed. Spent 3 years telling myself silence was the safest thing I could offer anyone. You're the first person who's made me want to be loud about something instead. That's either the most romantic thing anyone said to me, or a very strange way to describe a mafia boss falling for his translator. Can it be both? She laughed, really laughed, and for one unhurried moment neither of them was thinking about warehouses or manifests or the man listening from a stairwell somewhere. He kissed her before either of them could talk themselves out of it, slow and careful, like he was handling something he was afraid to break. She didn't pull away. Neither did he. That's not answering my question either, she whispered. No, but it felt more honest than words. Ask me again after tonight. When we both know if the ground's still standing. Deal. 40 minutes outside the city, behind a hardware store, a man stood at a kitchen sink, humming to himself, washing a single plate. The woman went completely still. It was him. He goes by a different name now. The man beside her kept his voice low. He doesn't know I'm bringing you tonight. I didn't want to make that call for him without asking you first whether the risk was worth it. Tears came before she could stop them. You're really giving him back to me. I'm giving you the truth. What you do with it is yours. What if he doesn't want to be found? What if 3 years was long enough to let go? Then that's his choice, not mine, not yours, his. Her hand was on the door handle when his phone buzzed hard against the dashboard. His whole face changed. We have to go, now. Why? His men followed us. We were careful. Careful isn't the same as invisible. Get down and stay down. Blocks later, headlights closed fast in the mirror, twin beams swelling in the side mirror until they filled it completely. He cut the engine lights, spun down a service alley, and drove straight into a second car already waiting, blocking the exit, its doors already opening before their own car had fully stopped. Out on my side. Now. Too late. A door on her side was already open. A hand closed around her arm and pulled hard enough to wrench her shoulder. His phone flew from his hand as he lunged after her, skidding under the car, the screen cracking against the concrete with a sound that seemed far too loud for how small it was. Go of me. Quiet. The rival's grip tightened. This isn't about you. It's about what your boss decided to protect instead of me. She fought. It didn't matter. Zip ties bit into her wrists, and she was dragged into the parking structure across the street, the same fluorescent light buzzing above her like it was dying too, the same smell of oil and old concrete she would remember for years afterward. He reached for his phone and found only pieces, scattered like something already dead. Her go and this stays between us. Nothing stays between us anymore. You made that decision the day you chose her over the family. She knelt on the cold concrete, wrists bound, staring up at a man she'd barely known a season ago, the whole strange arc of the last 3 months collapsing down into this one narrow stretch of concrete and fluorescent light. You people killed my brother. Your brother isn't dead. Don't. He's the reason you're still breathing right now. Touching. Truly. But her brother is also the reason I lose everything the moment he opens his mouth. So here's what happens next. Whoever you were planning to call, you're not calling them now. The rival nodded at the shattered phone, still smoking faintly on the concrete outside. There was nothing true left to bluff with, and the man said nothing. No clever line this time. Just an honest one. I don't know if anyone's coming. I only know I'm not leaving without her. Something flickered across the rival's face, not fear, something closer to disappointment. You want to know why I started? Your father passed me over. 20 years of loyalty, and when he needed a successor, he chose blood instead of the man who actually ran this operation while he was busy being a legend. I built something of my own because nobody was ever going to hand me anything. So you traded loyalty for spite and called it ambition. I called it fairness. There's nothing fair about weapons moving through neighborhoods that trusted us to keep them safe. You didn't build something of your own. You just found a faster way to become the thing my father spent his life trying not to be. What does that make you? The son who inherited a throne he never had to fight for? Maybe. But I'm the one choosing what to do with it now. That's more than you ever gave yourself the chance to do. Pretty words. They won't stop a bullet. He raised the gun. She screamed the man's name. He didn't move, didn't flinch, just kept his eyes locked on the man he used to call brother. Then pull the trigger. See if it feels like fairness afterward. Shot went wide. The rival's arm wrenched sideways as headlights flooded the garage from the street entrance. It wasn't backup he'd called. It was a car that had been idling 3 blocks away for hours, tailing the same network she'd first cracked open in a rusted warehouse weeks earlier. The detective was out of the driver's seat before it had fully stopped, weapon drawn, 2 more officers behind her. Drop it, now. The rival's grip loosened just enough. The woman scrambled back against a concrete pillar and the man was already moving toward her, ignoring an officer telling him to stay clear. Turning your own brother in arms? The rival shouted. I didn't. She did. I was just standing here hoping she got here in time. Officers surrounded him. He dropped the gun before they had to make him. The man was already crouched beside her, cutting the zip ties with a blade from his jacket, hands shaking for the first time all night. Are you hurt? I'm fine. I'm fine. You're allowed to not be fine. She let herself shake then, just for a moment, her forehead against his shoulder while the sirens kept turning behind them. You could have died tonight. Spent 3 years protecting a promise. Tonight I finally understood I was protecting the wrong thing. Promises don't need protecting. People do. That to me again when we're not sitting on a parking garage floor. Deal. An hour later, a paramedic wrapped a blanket around her shoulders while she sat on the back of an ambulance, the fabric scratchy and too thin against the cold, still shaking, the man refusing to leave her side despite 2 officers trying to pull him aside for a statement. Wrists are bruised, not broken. The paramedic checked her pulse against the light. She's in shock, but she'll be fine physically. Physically. The rest isn't something I can bandage. That part takes longer. Can hear you both, you know. She managed something close to a smile despite everything. I'm sitting right here. Sorry, be sorry, just don't leave. I wasn't planning on it. He sat beside her on the cold metal step, his arm around her shoulders, and for a long while neither of them said anything else. Behind them, officers loaded the rival into a car. His shoulders slumped in a way that looked almost like relief, and the fluorescent light above the garage kept buzzing, indifferent to how much had just changed underneath it. 2 days later, at a porch behind a hardware store, her hand steady in his this time, the door opened. Her brother froze, a plate still in his hands. Is that really you? The disbelief in his voice broke something open that 3 years of grief never managed to close. I found you. I never stopped looking. The night before, the man had called ahead, giving her brother a choice nobody had given him in 3 years. Your sister found the warehouse records. She found the legal aid. She found her own way to nearly all of it with or without me. The only thing left undecided is whether you want her to find you too. Does she look the same? She looks like someone who spent 3 years refusing to give up on you. So older, angrier, still her. Bring her tomorrow. Before I lose my nerve. I told myself you'd moved on, he told her now on the porch. That it was safer for you to believe I was gone. Nothing about believing you were gone was ever safer. It just hurt quieter. I wanted to call you 100 times. Every time I talked myself out of it. Told myself one phone call could undo everything that was risked to keep me alive. You don't owe me an explanation. You owe me dinner. A long one. He laughed, really laughed, for what looked like the first time in years. A sound that seemed to surprise even him. They held each other in the doorway a long time, neither one willing to be the first to let go. Words weren't going to be enough anyway. The man stood back, hands in his pockets, watching a debt settle itself without any more bloodshed. Something like relief finally loosening the set of his shoulders. That night, tea going cold on the steps between them, her brother asked the question that had been sitting there since the door opened. You could have told her sooner. I could have. I told myself I was protecting your life. Some of that was true. Some of it was fear that the truth would take away everything I built to hide it. Now I'd rather lose control than lose her trust. That's the first honest thing your family's ever said to mine. Then let's make it a habit. The following week, the woman and her brother sat across from each other at a diner that stayed open past midnight, fluorescent lights humming overhead in a way that no longer felt threatening. Plates empty, coffee cold, 3 years of missed conversations spilling out in no particular order. The way water finds every crack in a dam once the first one gives. You cut your hair. You grew a beard. We've both changed. That's what happens when someone fakes their own death for 3 years. Fair. Never stopped setting a plate for you at Sunday dinner. Did you know that? His jaw tightened, the humor draining out of his face. I didn't, and I don't know how to carry that. You carry it by coming home and setting your own plate down next to hers. That's the only way I know how to carry any of this. What if she's angry? What if 3 years of grief doesn't just disappear because I walk back in the door? Then she's angry, and you sit with it, and you stay anyway. That's what family does. It's what I did with a stranger's tattooed hands cutting zip ties off my wrists a few weeks ago. I think you can manage a conversation with our mother. He laughed again, quieter this time, but real. A week later, the detective sat across from the woman in a small interview room, recorder running. So he's alive, and willing to testify. Under protection. His choice, not mine. That's more than I had 6 months ago. She clicked the recorder off. For what it's worth, I still think you cut it closer than you needed to. Maybe. But I got my brother back instead of a case file. I'll take the scar tissue. Trial took 4 months, each hearing chipping away at what had once seemed like an untouchable operation. Her brother testified from behind a screen, his voice steady in a way it hadn't been in years, 3 years of rehearsed silence finally breaking into something like closure. And you're certain the manifests you inspected in Busan match the ones entered into evidence today? The prosecutor held up a folder thick enough to need both hands. I'm certain. I inspected the originals myself, 3 years ago. I've had a long time to make sure I never forgot what they looked like. Man presumed dead for 3 years, testifying from behind a screen. The defense attorney's tone was dry enough to draw a murmur from the gallery. Forgive me if the court finds that difficult to simply take at face value. I'd find it difficult too, if I were you. That's why I brought the originals, not just my memory of them. The falsified manifests, the rerouted weapons, all of it entered into evidence with her name nowhere near the headlines, exactly the way he had promised it would be. A week before sentencing, a letter arrived with no return address, the envelope slightly water-stained at one corner as if it had traveled through more hands than it should have. He recognized the handwriting before he'd even opened it. You'll tell yourself you won because the law agreed with you. It didn't. The law agreed with whoever built the better story. You always were better at stories than I was. Ask yourself someday whether that makes you righteous or just convincing. He read it twice, then handed it to her without a word. Are you going to answer it? No, not. Because answering him means I'm still playing by his rules. I stopped doing that the night he put zip ties on your wrists. He folded the letter once, twice, and set it down without tearing it up. A debt acknowledged, not erased, just finally closed. The legal aide stayed at the company through the restructuring, promoted to head of legal once the old guard was gone. Her office moved up 2 floors to a corner that actually caught the morning light. She found the woman in the hallway on her last day before the office moved to a new building, boxes already stacked by the elevator. You never did tell me what happened at that warehouse. You never told me what happened to you if he ever found out you gave me that folder. Suspected. He never proved it. I've survived 9 years here on the difference between those 2 words. Thank you for pointing, even when pushing wasn't safe. Thank you for finally being the one who pushed. 6 months later, on a rooftop garden, the same one where he'd first told her everything, the city lights flickered on one by one, string lights someone had hung along the railing swaying gently in a warm evening breeze. Her friend came too, arms crossed, sizing him up the way she'd wanted to since the first night the woman came home shaking. So you're the reason she stopped texting me every single night like she promised. My defense? Most nights were spent running from a man with a gun. That's not exactly the character reference I was hopping for. Behave. Fine, he can stay. A pause, a real smile finally. You did good. She left them to it, joining the brother by the drinks table, already deep in a conversation about nothing that mattered and everything that did. You know, she threatened to have him investigated before she agreed to come tonight. I stand by it. A woman's allowed to background check her best friend's Mafia boyfriend. Ex-Mafia, mostly. Mostly is doing a lot of work in that sentence. So is ex. Give the man some credit. He turned in his own second in command. Give him credit when he walks her down an aisle instead of into another parking garage. Thing at a time. Got time? I'm just saying it out loud so it's on record. What it's worth, I already told him if he breaks her heart. I know a very effective detective who owes our family a favor. That's the kind of family loyalty I can respect. Learned it from watching my sister refuse to give up on me for 3 years. Turns out it rubs off. Crossed the rooftop, the woman caught the tail end of it and laughed despite herself. You never did explain the tattoos. Each one is a promise I made and kept. My father believed a man's word should cost him something or it isn't worth much. He turned her hand over in his. I want to make you one now. No ink required. What promise? That I will never mistake silence for protection again. Not with you, not with anyone I love. That's a big word to use on a rooftop. It's been true for a while. I was just waiting for the right rooftop. You told me once in a parking garage that promises don't need protecting. People do. I meant it. I still do. Good, because I'm holding you to it. She smiled, the first fully unguarded smile she'd let herself have in 3 years. You know, when I got handed that folder with your name blacked out, I almost walked away. What stopped you? Rent. Purely rent. There was nothing noble about it. So I owe my entire life right now to an eviction notice. You owe it to a landlord who never once cut me a break in 4 years of tenancy. Remind me to send that man a fruit basket. Don't you dare. He'd assume it was a bribe and raise my rent again out of spite. They laughed together, easy now in a way that would have felt impossible on this same rooftop 6 months earlier, back when neither of them trusted the other enough to finish a sentence without measuring the cost of it first. Her brother joined them a moment later, plate in hand, the same quiet hum he'd had at the sink the night she found him again. 4 plates instead of 1, a family rebuilt from ashes, choosing honesty over the silence that had nearly cost them everything. Later, when the rooftop had emptied and only the 2 of them were left leaning against the railing, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box, turning it over once in his tattooed hands before he seemed to decide something. What's that? Not tonight. Tonight's just for the 4 of us and a rooftop. He slid it back into his pocket. But soon. I wanted you to see it coming instead of surprising you. You've had enough surprises for 1 lifetime. That's either the least romantic proposal setup in history, or exactly the kind of honesty I've been asking you for since the day we met. Can it be both? She laughed, leaning into his shoulder, watching the city lights finish turning on beneath them. She had come looking for the truth about her brother's death, and found the truth about her own life instead, that love built on secrets isn't love at all. It's just fear wearing a nicer outfit. Real loyalty doesn't hide the people it protects. It stands next to them in the light and lets them choose their own risks. Somewhere below them, the city kept moving the way it always had, indifferent to the 2 people on the rooftop and the small box still waiting in his pocket. And for the first time in 3 years, that indifference didn't feel like something to fear. It just felt like the world, going on, the way it was supposed to. If you had 3 years to choose between a painful truth and a comfortable lie, which one would you actually pick? That answer is the whole reason this story got told.